Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome to Career Conversations with Vumi Msweli. And I always we've got a special guest, but this lady really is special and she is phenomenal. She is Yolanda Cuba. She's the Vice President of Southern and Eastern Africa of the MTN Group. She's the former CEO of Vodafone Ghana. She literally was one of the youngest CEOs in the Johannesburg Stock Exchange history at the age of 29. The World Economic Forum has named her one of the young global leaders. She's been named by the Choiseul 100 Africa of Institute by Institute Choiseul France, and she's also the founder of one of my favorite organizations, the Mentorship Boardroom. So, ladies and gentlemen, Yolanda Cuba.
Hello, everybody, and hello, Vumi, and thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us, Yolanda. So, Yolanda, I want everyone to get to know you, the woman behind all the accolades. So, we're going to go into rapid fire intro questions, okay? So, let's
Okay.
go. I know you've just come back from one of these, so I'm going to be interested to see which you choose. Beach or bush?
Beach.
Okay. She's literally back from holiday, so that's perfect. This is going to be a little controversial because you're in the ICT sector, but Android or Apple?
I'm more Androidy, to be fair.
Okay.
I use both though.
Okay. Tea or coffee? Ah.
Coffee,
Morning or night?
night,
Sedan or SUV?
SUV,
Kindle or good old fashioned book?
book,
Flats or heels?
heels.
Wine or beer?
Neither.
That
I
doesn't
had to
drink.
disappear from screen for that one.
Seven colors on a Sunday or a braai?
Okay, repeat that.
Seven colors on a Sunday or a
Mm.
braai?
No, on a Sunday, 7 colors.
Okay. Dinner, dead or alive, you can invite anybody. Who is coming and what are you serving?
Ooh, I would invite the Obamas because I think they are such fantastic family. I would invite Margaret Thatcher because I want to actually get to know that kind of woman behind what we see. I would invite Nelson Mandela because I like the leadership style. I would invite Archbishop Tutu just to say, like, just to learn from someone who is like that, who actually embodies such humanity just by being, right? And then I would invite some cool youngsters as well that I sort of like and I come across once in a while, and yeah, so those are the people that I would invite. And I would definitely invite my daughter just to add that cheekiness in everything.
And what would you serve?
What would I serve? I think starters would be something like a soup, to be fair. I'm a soup person. And then I'm also a casserole person. So I would definitely have oxtail as part of what would be served with mash and asparagus or some other greens. And dessert will be malva or tiramisu or something like that.
Awesome. And I think with this weather, you're making me hungry. Yo, that's
I
gonna
know,
be
right?
delicious.
I'm even hungry.
So Yolanda, in getting to know you, I'm always surprised. So I'm interested to know how would you define yourself? So if someone says who is Yolanda, what would you say?
I would say she is a, uh, a people's person. She's someone who actually is out there, not afraid to go out and get what it is that she wants or whatever is actually being offered to her. She is not scared of opportunities and taking opportunities. Um, I would say she's bold and she loves people. She loves inclusive development, whether it's financial inclusion, whether it's education inclusion, or anything like that. Just leaving people behind, whether it's digitally or not. For me, that's something that's difficult. So I do not want to leave anyone behind as we move forward in society.
Okay. So your journey for me has been very interesting, right? So you found yourself in the space where you started out, you were a chartered accountant, and now you find yourself literally sort of venturing and pioneering in the ICT space, where tech is so needed on the continent. Tell us a little bit about your journey, and I'm interested to know specifically what have been some of those highlights, those mountain peak moments where you're like, Vumi, I couldn't believe this is my life. And what were some of those points where you're like, yo, Vumi, I can't believe this is my life?
So I guess, I mean, one of the benefits I had is that I started work early. When I say work, I mean formal work as well. I started at 21. I was in my first formal job at 21, graduated and everything. And I started in marketing, right? And
I didn't know that.
that was, I know, a lot of people don't know. So my first job was actually in marketing. I worked for Robertson Spices, peanut butter, and the like, Hellman mayonnaise, and so on and so on. So, but after a few months there, I realized this was not for me, and I actually did a conversion into accounting. I learned a lot of lessons in that first year of work, and we can touch on that later. But and then we moved on then to my second phase. My second phase was a difficult decision where I actually had to move from a job where I was getting paid as a normal person, where you can afford a car, you can afford to stay alone. I actually moved to Durban at that stage. I lived in Durban, not at home in Cape Town, and so on and so on. And then I had to make a difficult decision to say, I actually have to study part-time and then also move home, right? And I moved to Cape Town. Then I didn't have a car. I had to give up my car because I came from earning like 12, 13,000 Rand to earning 2,900 a month. So you go back home, literally, people know how difficult it is to go back home once you've
Yeah.
left home for a couple of years. So yeah,
Mm.
so that was my first kind of big journey. And then that's why I'm saying I learned a lot of lessons from that first year of work and the decision to go into articles. And after 3 years of articles, I then moved on to Mbela Panda, where I actually entered that in corporate finance, and literally less than a year later, I was then actually part of a long-term succession planning process, and they appointed me as a deputy CEO. And the deliberateness and the intentionality that Mbela Panda showed me is what most probably I still carry today. They said, we want to make you a deputy CEO. We know you're not ready today, but we're going to make this a long-term thing. But our intention doesn't change, right? So you're not put into some funny kind of position, no, study this one in the back end, and then we'll make you a deputy CEO. And basically that helped them fast track my career. And then I moved to, after 10 years almost at Mbela Panda, I then moved to SAB for 3 years. Again, that had a very specific reason why I joined SAB. When I joined SAB, I said, I actually want to pivot my career into what I call long-term sustainable corporate career. And I actually then went to SAB, and I remember having a discussion with the CEO of SAB at the time, and I said, no, I want to build repeatable models of success. And I see SAB as one of those companies. By the way, what most people don't know is that I actually went and I spoke to Putuma at exactly the same time at MTN,
Wow.
right? But he was just about to leave. So he said, let's wait until the new CEO comes and then have a discussion. But by that time, I had actually moved on with SAP. So yeah, so for me, that's something that has helped me in my career. And then I moved on to Vodacom and then to MTN. Basically, I mean, just sort of moved around. I guess what was clear from day one in my career is that although I started in in audit, right, in external audit in my career as I was doing article clerk, I was an article clerk. I was very clear that this is not necessarily where my passion lies. The qualification is important; it opens many doors, but I would need to find my own niche within the space, and hence I chose corporate finance, and then after moving from corporate finance, and then moving into general management.
You seem to be very, very intentional. And that's the thing I talk a lot about in career coaching is intentionality. For you to think, Uti, when you were getting ready, you were like, MTN is one of those. Now this is where you find yourself. That speaks to that intentionality. Um, so what I find fascinating about you, a lot of people don't know this, but you're a twin.
Yes.
And
Uh-uh.
you and your sister are very successful, both in your own rights. And I'm always curious. I'm like you. I would love to meet your mother. I want to know what she was instilling in you guys, because like usually you find it's, oh, this one's excelling and this one's not doing so well. To have both
Mm.
of you so successful speaks a lot to what she was instilling, and frame of reference and that inspiration. So I want to know who has been your greatest inspiration and why.
My greatest inspiration has been mostly actually my family, to be fair. And when I was young, my grandmother actually had businesses that then went to my aunt. And as children, we actually had to work at the shop,
Mm,
right? And at the butchery as well, and go into the streets and sell offal and all those kind of stuff. So that's where we started off from. So basically, and at that time, the whole motto was, if you want something, you have to work for it. So I was a dancer, and I was told, if you want that, those beautiful ballroom dancing dresses,
yes.
you actually have to
You did
work for
ballroom
it. I mean,
dancing.
at that time, yes, I do ballroom and Latin.
I didn't know that.
No. Yeah, yeah, I do, I do.
That is so cool.
So yeah, so I mean, there were expensive dresses relative at that time, and we had to work for it, right? So
Mm,
the whole culture of working for it was instilled within us very early on. And then from my mother, I think one of the things that both my sister and I actually got is we saw her when we were young actually opening a law firm in Kempton Park in the early 80s. We were really, really
mm,
small. And you could see that the environment, right? You could see it's very
mm,
white, it's very this and da da da, but you didn't fully absorb it until you were like later on in primary school, late primary school, higher primary school, that actually this was bold, right? That what this woman had done was bold and all this kind of stuff. And that actually I think gave us permission almost to actually go out there and just do whatever it is that we wanted, right? And then from my ex-stepdad, right? This man valued education above everything else. I remember the one time, I mean, we're sitting at home, and I don't know if you remember this, but the word native had a negative kind of
yes.
derogatory
Connotation.
word, right? It
Mm,
was a derogatory word for a long,
yeah.
long time, you know.
Mm,
So we, I walk in the house, and I'm like, uh, this person has actually said I'm a native, and I'm going on and
mm,
on and on. And my stepfather asked at the time, I mean, I was in most probably standard 5 or something like that, and he said, "What is the meaning of native?" Right?
mm,
And he said, "Go take the dictionary." And then I'm like looking for the dictionary, I can't find the dictionary. He got it in. At that time, he actually was even traveling by bus as well.
mm,
He actually got into the bus, went to Rondebosch, right? We stayed in Khayelitsha at the time,
mm.
and bought us all dictionaries, all of us, including my mother,
Oh, wow.
and brought them home. And then he made me read what is a definition of native. And even today, I still remember the definition. And he said, and then he asked me, if someone says you are the one from or of that place or something like that,
Mm,
then what is wrong with that? What
mm,
is wrong with that word? Aren't you a native of South Africa? I'm like, yes, you know,
mm,
and it taught me something. It taught me actually now to be conscious of what I hear and what I say, right?
mm,
And his drive for education was unsurpassed. I mean, this guy, when my stepfather was with, when we met him for the first time, he had just he was just finishing his honors, and then he said to us, he wants to be Professor Doctor, and his surname, right? And this guy was nowhere, right? And when I say nowhere, I mean he was a lawyer, normal
mm,
lawyer in a normal kind of job, kind of thing, nothing special, right? And he had this big ambition. And then he went out, he changed jobs, he went and lectured, he became a professor finally. And then
ah,
he did his doctorate, he did postdoctoral studies. And as we sit here, he is a judge,
oh, wow.
right?
You made it happen.
So and so that sense of actually saying what your ambition is and actually driving towards it and doing what is necessary and making the changes necessary,
Mm.
being comfortable with short-term sacrifice in order to get what you want are some of the lessons that I learned mostly from my family.
Yeah. That's powerful. I love that your stepdad was able to pour that into you. And I know we talk about this a lot, the importance of, really having people who are able to pour, mentors, coaches. So I'm curious to know, do you have a personal career advisory board? And if so, what has been the best piece of advice?
So I have had lots of mentors and a lot of sponsors, right? And that's what I use. And when I was doing, for example, the transition between Velapanda, you were the youngest CEO, you were heading up an investment company, you're good with corporate finance. You had people when I said I was leaving, I had people actually offering me to put money behind me and to start an investment fund and do this and da da da. And I had to sit down and say, what is it that I wanted to do, right? And and that's when I decided that actually I want to be more corporate than more entrepreneurial, because I knew inside of me that I was not entrepreneurial, right?
That's
However, people
that's
around
hard for a
you,
lot of people to admit.
look here, I mean, each to their own, right? You must be actually able to say, this is not for me, right? And especially when you have people around you saying, but Yolanda, you've done this, you've done that, you've done this, you've done that. But I always tell people, but I was on a Velapanda ticket, you know? When I
Mm,
called people, they returned my call, right? Now, if I call the same person, right, I don't think they necessarily would return my call the same day. I mean,
mm,
literally call pretty much anyone and they would return my call, right? So for me, that was an important kind of mind, kind of go into self, actually understand who you are and what you want to be in the future. So it was an important moment where blocking out the noise and actually listening to self was an important part. But what was important during that time was actually having one of my mentors, who is Simon Sussman, actually, and having a conversation with him and say, what I don't know what I want to do, da da da. And then he said to me something absolutely fascinating, because we're talking about my career and how it was like and all that. I was at the height at in my early 30s and so on. And he said, Yolanda, anyone can be a shooting star, but
yeah.
what's going to make it sustainable?
Mm,
You know, anyone can have once-off success. Anyone, you know, one time, one and every day.
yeah. One hit
Right?
wonder. Mm,
Mm. And he said, what's going to make you sustainable? And it was at that time when I went into myself and reflected then, what's going to make me long term sustainable? Right. And basically, as I went through that process, one of the things that I actually then came out of me was that actually I need repeatable models of success. And one of the things I remember saying to him, I said, as I reflect on my past, right, I worked with a lot of people who came from different industries to actually within Velapanda. And then I also had political prisoners and so on, amazing leaders, having said that, but they were not operationally, or they didn't grow up in a corporate sense where you have kind of
mm,
structured ways of thinking and so on, right? So, and at some point I said to Simon, I don't know if I did it or I winged it, right? and 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 I remember in the conversation afterwards, actually reflecting on our conversation, saying to myself, it doesn't matter what it is. What matters is how do I educate myself and educate my intuition to make the right decision. You know, all of them were the right decisions at the end of the day, but
mm.
you have to say, okay, what process did I follow in order to make that decision?
So how did you go about that? That's a very interesting
Mm,
phrase you're using, because you're saying, how do I educate myself from a mental perspective, and then also how
mm,
to educate my intuition. which
Mm.
is, almost that gut feeling, that stuff that isn't as tangible, that a lot of us can then uh, accredit our success to.
So yeah. So I mean, one of the things then that I said is I needed to learn repeatable models of success, right?
Mm,
And that's how I was going to educate my intuition. What is the process by which you actually make these decisions? What are the frameworks in the back of your head that you go through? And being quite deliberate about it. Things mustn't always happen to you. You mustn't just be acting on stuff. For me, it's important to actually say, I am responding to this, because responding to something actually has a lot of deliberateness and thought actually behind it. So that's really what I wanted to do. And as a leader, I was already a CEO, remember. And at the time, I said, you never make any big decisions with perfect information.
mm,
Yeah? There's no decision you make like a big decisions, perfect information, no such thing, right?
exist.
And so you actually had to find this thing inside of you that says it feels right in my gut.
Mm,
Yeah. But in order to get there, you actually had to have gone through a process of learning, right? And I remember as I said, when I spoke to Tuma and I phoned, by the way, I called these people. I didn't know them from about soap except from the newspapers. Um,
really?
and I said to him, I want to see you. This is where I am. Da da da. He made time for me. Norman made time for me. And strange enough, at SAB, they're saying, actually, Yolanda, we were looking for you already, right? That's how the universe works, right? And then I said, I want to go on a learning journey for the next 2 to 3 years.
Mm,
That was my pitch. I want to go on a learning journey. You guys, these two companies that I've specifically identified, right, had grown from being at the south tip of Africa to actually being globally relevant and significant, right? SAB to the number 2 brewer in the world after AB InBev, and MTN was one in the top 10
mm,
MNOs in the world,
mm,
right? And so when you think about that scale and that scale of success, right, you actually are saying, how did these guys actually do it over and over and over and over and over again? So there's a system in the madness, right?
mm,
It might look like there's no system. There's always a system that actually allows for that kind of replicability to actually happen. And I then ended up at SAB, which I'm eternally grateful for. Some of the ways of thinking that I have today actually emanate from SAB, right?
mm.
SAB, before it was fashionable to be data driven in terms of decision making, they were data driven organization, right? They were right up there. There were no decisions that were made without data actually backing it up, right? And number two, I had a CEO. The first one was Norman, who actually was he was a challenger CEO, right? By the time you get something through Norman, you must know that you know your story, right? And the
Mm,
likelihood of success was very high. Third thing is that SAB had codified a lot of ways of doing things. So at SAB, a little bit like Toyota, there is an SAB way of manufacturing, an SAB way of
mm,
marketing, and da da da. And what that did, it actually ensured that you get 60 to 70% before you applied your own kind of thinking process.
mm.
Your own thinking process gave you the delta or the
Okay.
alpha at the end, the
That push.
outperformance. But in terms of actually getting the baseline and actually ensuring that you would be successful, the detail that went into planning actually helped with a lot of that. And one of the things that Norman instilled in me, two things that he instilled in me, at least that I took from him, and I cherish even to this day. One is he used to talk about a DuPont, and a DuPont is basically understanding if there is a number, if there is a thing, what drives that to the lowest denominator of it.
Sure.
So if you actually say something revenue of a line of a specific line or item actually is 10, right? What drives that? quantity times price. Everyone knows that because
Mm.
that. And then he wants to actually know, okay, what drives quantity? What drives price? And then
Mm.
you go all the way down until
Granular
you reach, for
detail.
example, percentage of disposable income per per capita and the
Mm.
percentage of that. That's what actually ultimately actually decides that. But it's very far away from price, right?
Mm.
And then quantity, what determines that, right? And how do you actually go to the lowest denominator around that? And then, by the way, it's not just quantity, right? People always say it's quantity times price. Actually, no, it's also availability. If it's not there, the pricing is zero, the revenue is
Mm.
zero, right?
Mm.
So, what drives availability? It's the trucks, is the this, is the this, is the this, and so on. So, he made me start thinking about even my income statement, how I read an income statement today. You know, although I was always a CA, right? You know,
Mm.
I understand the numbers, but I never before that actually consciously thought about what is the story behind the numbers, right?
Sure.
What decisions, because what he instilled in me is that everything you see in an income statement, balance sheet, any set of accounts, right, is a decision. That's all it is. It's a
True.
decision.
Mm.
So if your gross profit, for example, your gross profit margin is very low, it's 10%, right? Let's say, what are the wrong decisions you made? You decided to source from a different currency from the one you're selling from. You decided to be in the middle of let's say, of Sandton instead of being downtown Johannesburg. You've decided, these are all decisions.
Mm. And
So
the
all your money
ramifications are
is
being
going
shown on
up
the income
above the
statement.
line, it's
Mm.
gone, right? So yeah, so those are the kind of things. So Norman, I learned a lot of that from him. And the second thing is the veracity of your decision. With Norman, he never told you this, but if you actually saw how he operated, you would understand this. Norman never accepted you when you said any kind of recommendation. When you say, when you go to him and say, "This is my recommendation," you present and you say, "This is my recommendation," right? He will ask you, "What other options did you consider?" Right?
So he's
And
challenging the
this is
thinking and
important.
why are you making this decision?
Why are you getting to this decision? Because a lot of times we are channeled into the decision that we want without actually thinking broadly. Why are we making this decision, and why other alternatives are not relevant? And when you do that, right, it's a little bit like scenario planning. People who scenario plan tend to be able to deal better with any adversity then that comes within the situation because they've considered different permutations. And a lot of times people will come and present to you without actually telling you what other alternatives are there. And you can see that they have not considered any other alternatives, right? And for me, that's the thing, is that there is not one necessarily one solution to get to the right outcome. However, there could be multiple, but the reason why I'm choosing this one and being clear on that one actually increases the chances of success.
I like that. I like how he pushes his people and himself to expansive thinking.
Mm,
Because that's a very different way of thinking about. Because often when you're thinking at that C-suite level, it's like just give me the highlights and let me make
mm,
decision. Never going into
mm,
such granular detail and expansive ways of thinking.
mm,
And talking about expanding our thinking, yeah, I'm excited for this question.
mm.
Yolanda, what are your top 5 best reads and why?
Okay, my first one would be, Say It Right the First Time, right? It was a book that was instrumental when I became deputy CEO for the very first time. I was super, super young. I was like 26 or something. And I realized that in order to be able to actually be effective, I needed to learn how to communicate.
Mm.
And and that book helped me to learn how to communicate. It's a small book. I don't know if it's here, but it normally is around me somewhere because I do dish it out quite liberally, you know. The second book I would say is Convince Them in I think it's 90 seconds. Also, never too far for me. 90 seconds. Okay, I can find that one. Strange enough, it's right here. You know,
Convince them in 90 seconds. Okay, by
Yeah,
Nicholas
you know,
Wooten. Okay.
yeah, and it's really around influence and basically understanding who you are when you walk into a room. And one of the examples it makes, for example, they say, walk into a room, right, feeling like a hippo,
Mm-hmm.
and walk into the office feeling like a hippo that day, right? How does it feel like, right? And then the next day it says, walk into the room, into your office, feeling like a kangaroo.
Oh,
Can you see? Can you
running
feel it?
around.
Can
It's
you
just a
feel the
different
difference?
energy.
Can you feel the difference?
It's so
Okay.
different. Because one, you like, it's heavy, I'm taking up space, lethargic. The other's like
Yes.
high energy
No.
bouncing.
And that is in that book. It's in the Convince Them, and it's a practical book around understanding your own presence, understanding how you can actually influence people verbally and non-verbally, and so on. The third book that I would say is a book called Mobile MBA. Mobile MBA was a sort of offbeat. So when I fly, I normally just buy a book and I'll read it. And it was one of those. And one of the things that I learned from that book, and I happened to read it at the same time as I was at SAB, I think it was. And one of the chapters there actually talks about this notion that I was talking about around actually understanding that was this, your income statement is an outcome of your decisions. And I loved that because it was then core to who I became as a leader, right? Understanding numbers, understanding the meaning, asking the right questions, and so on. So for me, that's another book, great book. I'm trying to think of non kind of political books that I would say. Atomic Habits and
Okay.
um, and the 1% Rule. Read
Yeah.
those together, you know, and I would say that's one of the great reads. Um, it just is great to see and understand that you know habits are more important than goals, right? And I never actually really internalized that before, right? Goals are finite, habits are not, right? And basically it helps redefine how you think about success. So if I want to lose weight like I want to do now after the holidays, you know,
Mm. You will need
you have
both.
no idea what I was eating, and
I think I'm
and
just post COVID, Jeguraf. Yeah.
so I said you would normally say I want to lose 5 kilograms, for example. That's a goal, right? I want to get to X number of kilograms, right? And what atomic habits actually did for me was to say, actually, why don't you redefine that as I want a healthy lifestyle?
Mm.
Because then when you want a healthy lifestyle, right? Now it's a system of life of being in a healthy lifestyle that you want, rather than just a once off that once I reach that 5, then I'm done. And then
Mm.
what happens? You gain it again.
Yeah, you do.
You know,
You actually
so
don't maintain what
actually,
good habits
yes,
before.
and that's what it talks about. It talks about a system of actually getting to the outcomes you want, rather than actually focusing on the goal itself, right? What are you going to change in terms of outcomes? And the 1% Rule is a nice book just to actually get some real insights around, you know, what can I do today? I mean, I remember there was a time when I didn't want to do any exercise and whatever, and I just promised myself I'll just do 2 minutes. Yeah,
Mm.
and you wait until your body actually internalizes, because 2 minutes is nothing, right?
Yeah.
If I tell you read a book for 2 minutes, even if I tell my kid read a book for 2 minutes, they don't mind. 2 minutes is
Yeah.
short, so it's non-committal, right? It's very much like you can do it anytime and so on. So you actually it's easy to do. And how
Mm.
do you get these kind of easy to do moments in the things that you find hard and things that you procrastinate on? Remember, we procrastinate on things that we are not sure about, or things that we cannot do,
That's
right?
true.
Things that we do, we generally don't procrastinate
No, you
on.
can do it
Yeah,
now. Mm.
you do now and you get it over and done with. So that's another book. And then I guess the last book, am I number 5 now? I don't
Your
even know.
number, you said Atomic and 1% is one book.
Then it's
So
one
but
book.
one
Yeah,
more.
it literally is. Um, And then now I have to choose. Mm, I'm so torn now. Um, I like a book called The One Thing, right? But you only have to read the foreword and the first chapter, and then you've read the whole book.
Okay.
So it's a nice concept. It's looking for that one thing that if you did will not necessitate another 5 or 10 steps that you would be required to actually take, right? So practical example, let's say uh, if you wanted what uh, someone to wash your car, look after your car, da da da, whatever, take you from place to place, and all those kind of stuff, and you're worried about your car as well and the cost of your car, then what is the solution that you could have that actually takes away all those 10 different kind of anxiety points? And you can say, actually, I can get an Uber.
Oh, wow. And it annihilates
It's
all
the
the,
one,
all the
so it
ways.
eliminates all the issues that you had, right? So what is the one thing that does not necessitate you doing everything else? The one thing you can do that does not necessitate. And that goes very much around the 80-20 principle, which is a book that I read in my first year of work. And it was amazing to have read that book in my first year of work, the 80-20 principle. Yeah. And then the last one was The Gift. That's where I was torn, because The Gift is really a beautiful book around adversity and actually not allowing adversity to actually dictate who you are.
Yeah. Yolanda, I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. So, as we close, I'm going to ask you to complete the sentence. I am a master
At interior decorating.
Wow. Okay. Okay. I see you. We see you. What I know for sure is
That I am loved by my children and my family.
my life's work is.
Ooh, my life's work is inspiring others and definitely making sure that the world is better than what I found it.
Knowing what I know now,
Hmm. Knowing what I know now, I would be an architect.
really. Okay, that's so surprising. Okay. Wow, that's taking me back. Okay. Last and not least,
I am a unique, blessed, and Africa loving child of the soil. And my vision in life is to really make Africa shine bright.
You're well on your way in doing that. You're doing that already. Thank you so much, Yolanda. I appreciate you making the time.
Only a pleasure, and thanks for having me.
Thank you. So I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Yolanda Cuba as much as I did. And make sure to tune in to our very next Career Conversations with Vumi Msweli. Stay safe, everybody.